All right, everybody, man, oh man, I finally sat down and watched the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air 30th reunion this morning. And I pulled it up on the TV and I was saying, okay, I need to really get my room straightened up. I got to get some stuff ready to mail off tomorrow for eBay, and then I really need to do a bunch of have and have not videos since the show's returning next Tuesday and whatnot. But while I was getting stuff ready around my room, within like the first 5 minutes, I just had to stop doing everything and sit back and watch the reunion. And it's about about a minute. I mean, excuse me, an hour, 15 minutes long. So basically about 75-ish minutes. I mean, honestly, I thought it would have been longer. Don't get me wrong, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it, but I was like, in the mindset that this might be somewhere around maybe an hour and a half to 2 hours long. But the reunion did what it was really supposed to do. And I think it goes without saying that the biggest takeaway from said reunion was Janet and Will's sit down, and they reconciled after not seeing each other for almost, what was it, 27 to 30-ish years. And before we get to that part of, I'll give my thoughts on that. I'll talk about some of the things, I enjoyed the entire thing, but I want to talk about some of my favorite highlights of the reunion, things I didn't know from behind the scenes, things that made me just bust out laughing because of behind the scenes stories. And then when they would show the clip of, hey, remember this particular scene when this actor did this, and then they would pull it up and I'm like, I never noticed that. Please go ahead and take a moment to hit that like button to show that you like the video, especially if you love the reunion. Also, hit that subscribe button, so we can get closer and closer to 200,000 subscribers. Also, follow me on social media. Links are in that description box below. And be sure to click the bell and select all. That way you keep yourself notified whenever I post things to the channel. But I would say, first of all, I believe I knew about this. Well, maybe I didn't know about it, but I remember growing up and noticing, whenever Uncle Phil threw Jazz out of the house, sometimes it would be like, evening or night. And I'm like, wait, Jazz wasn't wearing that shirt. Or wait, it was nighttime when they were in the house, but it's daytime when he's being thrown out. And Jazzy Jeff was explaining how one day they had filmed like, what was it, like 130, 150 takes of him being thrown out of the house. And, it got to the point where they just understood that, okay, let's try not to kill this guy, go easy on him, show him some mercy. They started replaying the same clip of him being tossed out, which I thought was hilarious. I mean, one of the classic moments of the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. And another thing, I think during the first like 10 minutes or so, this part took me out when I think it was Karen. And I feel like I'm going to be calling them by their character names because that's what that's why I know them for best. When Hillary was talking about, the pilot episode, and she was so nervous. And when her first scene came up, it's like, Daddy, I need $300. And she talked about how she noticed Will was mouthing the lines to her. And she was so mad. And then as they talked about the early episodes, it was something that he would actually do, where he knew everyone's lines. And I think the one that got me the most was the Don Cheadle scene where, what was the name? Ice Tray, right? Ice Tray. That was like one of the early episodes. And when they were sitting on the couch on the special, what they did was they zoomed in on Will's mouth and like kind of darkened the rest of the scenery, but then made the light around his mouth brighter, so you notice when Will's mouth was moving, he was literally mouthing the lines of the other actor in the scene with him. I thought that was just a fun Easter egg, so when I go back and rewatch the early episodes, it's something that I'm really going to look out for. So that was hilarious in itself. And I think Will Smith did a video about this on his YouTube channel about a year or two ago, where he explained the story of how he became the Fresh Prince. Went out to the Arsenio Hall show, then went to Quincy Jones' house for a birthday party, and then he was told, hey, I got all these people in here who can give the green light. You need to audition. And Will's like, well, yeah, give me a couple of weeks so I get an acting coach. He's like, no, it needs to be done right now. He's like, fine, give me 10 minutes. Audition in 10 minutes. And that's such an inspirational story because of the fact that you're not always going to feel like you're ready for something sometimes you get thrust into it. It's one of those situations where um it is so inspirational. It really is, just to hear the story of how Will was almost, I wouldn't say denying an opportunity, but just recognizing like, hey, like this is a realm, or an alley that I don't usually travel through. I mean, for me to be actor or whatnot, I want to make sure that I have, proper coaching and whatnot before I even audition. So I just thought it was pretty incredible how that turned out. And I think he described it as like, he had me stand underneath like this huge photo of Michael, like, Thriller 84, and, like his, Quincy 70 Grammys and whatnot. And I just love the way that he was able to paint the picture. And not to mention, we got to see the audition tapes for a couple of the actors like Karen and Alfonso. And that was really cool. I will say, I wish we got more Jeffrey Sass throughout the reunion, because that was one of the selling points of the reunion, when the cast would talk about things and reminisce, and they would have clips from various scenes. I don't think we saw enough of Jeffrey's sassy moments interacting with the cast. That's something that I wish we saw a little bit more of. And let's see, I know that the James Avery yeah, it was a tribute, but I just loved how it was just them, the cast reminiscing. It was just them reminiscing about some of their favorite scenes with James, Uncle Phil. That was another great scene. And just like the How I Became the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, Will told the story about how the How Come You Don't Want Me Man scene was taped, and how he wanted to impress James and he calmed him down. And then as soon as they embraced, he's like, now that's acting. I have no words. And I loved how they talked about the relevancy of Fresh Prince, even though it's also sad, about how scenes like Jazz holding his hands up in the courtroom, or when Will and Carlton got pulled over and arrested, and then Uncle Phil and Aunt Viv chewed out the officer because it's like, oh yeah, black kids riding a nice car. And I think I said this before in a live stream or something, but I know that typically when it comes to racial profiling and whatnot by the police, most people pull the clip from Family Matters where Carl confronts the two white cops in that diner. And I'm like, I don't think enough people talk about the scene from The Fresh Prince where Uncle Phil and Aunt Viv went down there to get Will and Carlton out. Like, that was another iconic scene from an early 90s sitcom that tackled, racial profiling of, obviously between police and black people. Like, I think that scene, deserves to be at that same level of relevancy, not just the Family Matters one. And no, it's not me trying to say one show's better than the other. It's just the fact that, both those episodes from both of those classic iconic sitcoms truly, encapsulated certain things. Just like in the Family Matters, where I think it was the episode where Laura wanted to do something in school for Black History, and the N-word was spray painted on the inside of her locker. Like, there were a lot of things that went down during that time in those shows, and it's just tragic to see how how common that is in the present. But yeah, I mean, shows like that, they really will stand up and be remembered for generations to come. So as the special went on, we just heard more and more stories about how the cast interaction, how they met, what brought them to the show, to have that family dynamic. And I'm not gonna lie, outside of like, viral clips, or, let's say I find something when I'm scrolling my newsfeed, I haven't sat back and watched The Fresh Prince in years. Like, I can't remember the last time I just sat down and watched several episodes. Like, I watched the Carlton dancing in a strip club scene, or, Carlton dragging himself. It's like, no, how could he do it? No. And I love when they talked about how they love bringing in the audience into the fun, where they would break the fourth wall. I love that kind of stuff. And let me see. I'm going to get to the Janet stuff. I just want to make sure I tackle all the things I really loved about the reunion aside from that. Because even now this morning, as I look on Twitter, they talk about how, the controversial relationship between two actors for almost three decades has been, reconciled. But yeah, we even had little Nicky come up in there. Too bad Nia Long or Tyra Banks couldn't come up for a camp. Well, at least Nia Long, just because she played such a prominent role towards the end of the show. But I think I said this before on the channel, but I honestly prefer, and no, this isn't me saying like, because it's the original Aunt Viv, not the newer one, the second one. I prefer like the first stretch of the show compared to like the back seasons or episodes, because I don't know, like for me, the first couple seasons, like I could just binge them. I could just watch all the episodes without skipping one. But as the show got, to the point where you had the second Aunt Viv, and then little Nicky went from like an infant to like a 6 or 7 year old. And I'm like, wait, what? There are key episodes I'd watch, but there are a lot of episodes which I would skip entirely. Like, I think it got to the point where you had, like Hillary doing a talk show and everything. And, just like any show from back in that day, once the kids went to college, then it felt like the other characters kind of got sidelined because, one-on-one, Saved by the Bell. Well, then again, honestly, looking back now that I've been through college, I think Saved by the Bell, the college years, is actually better than I remember because, obviously, as I got older and experienced college, I could relate to what the characters were going through more than I did when I was a kid watching it. Boy Meets World did one hell of a job, though. Boy Meets World is one of the few examples of a sitcom or television series from the 90s where the main characters grew up through like middle school, high school. Then when they went off to college, the other main characters, like the parents, still played a prominent role in the show, despite not being, I guess you could say, under the same roof as their children who are the main characters. So when I look at the Fresh Prince, yeah, I mean, the cast still played a prominent role, but I just wasn't feeling it to the same extent I was when they were all living in the Banks mansion. And, of course, I'm not going to deny the classics, like, when Will's dad comes back. Pretty much all the holiday episodes, I loved them to death, especially the one where Will and, I think it's a two-parter, where Will and Uncle Phil go to jail at the massage parlor. And that was just a great one because I think all the aunts compete with each other to see who made the best, the best stuffing for Thanksgiving. I'm going to need to rewatch it because I remember they used to air the holiday episodes, Christmas or Thanksgiving, of course the Cosby Show was taken off, but all the shows, there used to be marathons of all the various sitcoms in their holiday episodes on their respective holiday, or at least the week of, but that hasn't happened in so long. But I'm definitely going to pull up the Thanksgiving episode later today. But let's go ahead and talk about the Janet part now. Will reminisced and talked about how, there are some things we talked about, not in front of the camera. And I just didn't feel right doing this reunion without having Janet involved in some way. So we actually had to sit down. And I know some people are like, man, it's too bad we didn't get to see her and Alfonso make, because I actually did watch that one clip where Alfonso's doing stand up or something. He rips into the original Aunt Viv or Janet, just going on about how she lost her mind and everything. So yeah, that's hard to come back from. Now I could be wrong because honestly, I haven't really been following the story because, over the years I would see bits and pieces of it. I feel like we would hear more from Janet ripping at Will Smith and the co-stars. I think there was that one photo where they had a reunion on a yacht or something, and Janet ripped the cast all those fake people and yada yada yada. So it made it, and I mean this comparison I guess is semi-relevant, but people were looking at Janet the same way they were looking at Monique in regards to, the whole Netflix thing and being blackballed and whatnot. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say one is more credible than the other, but it's good to hear both sides of the story. So now that we truly understand what Janet was going through, and then Will, was being honest because, some people, when you try to explain it, they really don't want to hear it, but he did, was saying, hey, it kind of reminded me of the New Edition story. Remember towards the end of part 3 where they're at Ronnie's wedding, I think it was Ralph and Mike sitting down and they were talking about how, well, why couldn't we have this conversation years ago? It's well, we're older, we're wiser. And Will recognized that, my first marriage and my second marriage and, having kids. And then, Janet was yeah, you're older and wiser. It's I'm able to understand now more than I did back then. Not knowing what you were going through. Plus, Janet kind of like, and again, I hate to just, compare things to make it seem like it's the same, but it kind of gave all that same vibe. It's like you never know what a person's going through. Like Chadwick Boseman, we didn't know about his cancer. Only those close to him did. But when it came to the cast of The Fresh Prince, they didn't know about Janet's abusive relationship or marriage, being disowned by the family and things like that. So I guess you could say, and correct me if I'm wrong, but my takeaway was like the vibe she was getting or giving off, she said was because she didn't know who she could trust. So like she would show up to work, and what was deemed as being difficult to work with was her just not knowing who she could trust and open up to, because she was going through so much hell in her personal life. So it was kind of like that person who would just show up, do their job, not talk to anyone, and go back to their trailer, that kind of vibe. So, I'm glad that they were able to kind of sit down, and, she really broke it down how being a black woman in the industry, being a woman in the industry is tough. Being a black woman on top of that is even tougher. So words can hurt, words can kill. So just saying the word difficult can pretty much shun people from interacting with a black actor, actress, whatever term you want to use. And, that was a tough pill to swallow. I know some people are like, yeah, Will's perfected that entanglement phase. Like, oh, he's not sorry. I'm not going to sit here and say who's sorry, who's not, who's being sincere. I just know that would be a tough pill to swallow. Like, to just sit there and not really know what can you say when someone is being honest, telling you their side of the story. And I'm not saying that, oh, well, Will isn't, all at fault because he didn't know Janet was acting the way she was because of what was going on, because he even said at that age, he felt like everyone was a threat, not just Janet, but the world, so I guess you could say, like, she even said, like, as your fame grew, like, we all knew. I think I kind of, choked up a little where she was like, no, we all knew you were going to be a star. I'm like, to hear that after the animosity between the two for so long, that I felt that. It's like the fact that, yeah, we knew you were going to blow up. We knew you were going to be a star. But, while you rose, once I got fired and everything, my fame, not just fame, but my career just diminished. And I remember seeing Janet on like an episode of the Jamie Foxx show. I believe she was in If Loving You Was Wrong. Correct me, Tyler Perry's If Loving You Was Wrong. Correct me if I'm out of place. I know that Jasmine Guy from A Different World was in there as Travis's mother. But I believe Janet was in Tyler Perry's If Loving You Was Wrong. It's just that show, since it ended, it's pretty much been off my radar for a while in terms of my thought process. But I really hope that I know some people are like, well, Will needs to do this and Will needs to do that. Whatever happens, I just hope that they're able to, resolve it. It doesn't have to be in front of the camera. Maybe they'll work on a project together. I don't know. But I thought that was great. Like I said, some people were like, oh, Alfonso and Janet didn't sit down. I mean, at the core, it's, Will and Janet that need to have the conversation. I feel like more people were interested in that than anything else. And I was reading some comments online because obviously the reunion did blow up, but those two, that conversation has sparked so many different, radio shows, podcasts talking about it. So I've been watching I watched several videos about the reunion before I actually watched the reunion this morning. And I was reading some comments, and some people were like, well, yeah, the other cast members and whatnot, they probably wanted to reach out and talk with her. But, with Will Smith being Will Smith, they just figured that if they interacted with her, then that'll probably be seen as blasphemous and they'll be exiled too. That actually makes sense. I'm not saying that's justifiable, but I mean, it makes sense. Like, if there's a buddy of yours and you work the same job, and let's say they get fired for something because let's say your boss deems them, difficult to work with. But at the end of the day, you got bills, so you can, your friend who was an ex-employee could go online and slander the boss and whatnot. But if you're seen like associated with them, then that could possibly tarnish your career as well, and you get fired. So it's one of those things where it's hard to pick a side in this, because at the end of the day, I think about it from the perspective of the other cast members, at least the ones who weren't outright vocal, or, like Alfonso, just, putting Janet to shame and whatnot. It's, I they didn't know what was going on either in Janet's life. So it's just one of those things where you got like the two talents colliding, where we had Will Smith versus the original Aunt Viv. And it would have been nice to, and I really wish that during the Uncle Phil, James tribute, I really wish we could have gotten Janet's thoughts about James and whatnot. I mean, like, I don't really know what that dynamic was like behind the scenes, but based on what I saw in the reunion and over the years, I don't think there's ever been anything where it was James versus Janet. I mean, based off what has been going on for so long, it's been Will versus Janet. But I really wish that would have been nice to see Janet reminisce about James, and because those two were amazing. I mean, Aunt Viv, well, the Janet version of Aunt Viv and Uncle Phil were up there for me with like Carl and Harriet Winslow, or George and Wheezy Jefferson. So I really wish we got more of that too. And of course, when the second or light skinned Aunt Viv met the original Aunt Viv for the first time, she was like, I never got the chance to meet her. That was just mind blowing. I remember, there have been TikToks, there have been videos, like Will really pumped it up. And that was I mean, the man knows social media. I mean, shoot. Some people are like, I wonder if Will and Jada will have Janet on the Red Table Talk. I mean, nah, I mean, they could, but I feel like for me, this reunion did what it was supposed to do. And they were able to kind of, mend fences and move forward. But like I said, it's just awkward, like, to just sit next to the person who, well, for a lack of a better phrase, feels like, you kind of ruined their life. So it's like, what can you say? What can you do? But, that's between them to work out. And some people are like, yeah, he probably, I mean, what if he cuts her a check for $5 million? I don't know. I just hope that things can, doors open for Janet now that the I guess you could say the truth has been revealed, so to speak. But overall, regardless of what happens between Will and Janet, I just really hope that this teaches, kind of like the show teaches, people who watched it over the years, that this reunion of sorts, or this reconciliation, shows us the fact that it's never too late to make peace with somebody who you've wronged, or if they wronged you. And more often than not, it's just a matter of having a conversation. Because when people are acting some kind of way, yeah, it's like, it's not cool to be disrespected. It's not cool to be disrespectful. But, sometimes it's better to have that conversation and, get a feel about what's going on, as opposed to keeping things bottled up. Or, in Janet's case, just slandering, Will back and forth, and the other cast back and forth on social media and in interviews, instead of having that sit down. Because not all, peace treaties, so to speak, need to be done in the public eye. Like, I'm not trying to badmouth these two reconciling, but I'm just speaking in, general. A lot of times these discussions can happen in private. Now, it doesn't have to be meant for the public's eye. And I'm really talking about, the everyday person, not celebrities or, internet sensations. But, yeah, sometimes the peace can be made. But just because, you forgive and whatnot doesn't mean, like, I remember hearing this from somebody recently. Honestly, I think it had to do with the Will Smith and Janet HUBERT sit down, like, or was it something else? I forgot. It's like, hey, we can say, or no, I think it was a caption I saw. It was like, hey, you can sit down and kind of make peace with the person who wronged you. It's like, yeah, it's like you can make peace, but you want to see them eat. It's like, you want them to sit down, break bread. It's like, but they don't have to be at your table anymore. It's like they could be at another table, doing their thing. But given what's happened between you two, it's like you really can't kind of sit down at the same table, because not everyone's going to be your friend. Not everyone's going to be an ally. It's a dog eat dog world. But at the same time, if somebody truly hurts you, it really is important to try to have that conversation. And I get it. Like, sometimes if somebody hurts you, it's not easy to, approach them about it. Not to mention if they kind of dismiss your feelings. But at the very core of it, if you at least try to make an honest effort or an attempt to reconcile, but they slap your hand away, it sucks, but you know, you kind of got to dust the sand from your, dirt from your sandals and move forward. But I'm glad the conversation happened. I'm just sad that it took almost 3 decades for it to happen. So yeah, I really wish the two of them the best. I know some people are like, wow, why is it Will doing that now? Is it because of the whole entanglement thing, or did he get humbled? I don't, I don't know. I don't care. I'm not here to judge his heart or the decision it was meant, or went behind the meetup. It's just the fact that I truly believe that he thought, hey, since this is the 30th anniversary, like there's no way we could do it without her. So kudos to Will, kudos to Janet for, sitting down, squashing that beef. And it was good to see, especially in the midst of 2020 where anything can happen. So if these two could sit down after almost, 30 years, then, that family member or friend who you kind of have bad blood with, maybe now's the time to kind of sit down and see if you can work things out. Like I said, just because you work things out, it doesn't mean you're going to be back to like buddy or whatnot like you used to be. But to kind of make peace, that really makes a lot of sense, especially with the holiday season coming around, and plus with 2020 being as wild as it is, not knowing what hell is going to rain down on us on a day-to-day basis. It's good to just put things to rest. So like I said, I really wish them the best. But moving on to the rest of the special, like I said, I think we had, little Nikki all grown up come in towards the last 20 minutes or so. And, they reminisced about, the final episode, the first episode, how it was like a party, with the audience. Like they said, Friday night was like the night. It felt like a club, for the audience to come up and appear at a shooting. And just to hear them reminisce about things like, people would have to, I think Alfonso was like, people had to stop what they were doing, watch the episode on TV and, read about it in the newspaper. It wasn't like today where you could watch it on your phone, stream it later, or just like, oh, well, I can't, watch it at 7 p.m., but I'll definitely check it out later tonight. There was none of that. And I mean, like I said, I'm only 29. I was born in 91, but it's just hard to think about how kids today have it so easy where if they miss a show, they could just watch it anytime they want. I mean, back in the day before DVDs, yes, I grew up in the VHS era. It was like insane. Like, now they put out eventually they put out the seasons, then they put out the entire series. And I think at one point it was on Netflix. At least I think The Fresh Prince is on Netflix, but then they took it down. And I remember back in the day when they first started putting out on DVD, I had the first couple seasons. And, now they got the full series out. So it's pretty wild to think about. Yeah, this special has me wanting to go back and watch some of the classic episodes, but I thoroughly enjoyed it. I'll probably watch it again, but not today. My feels, I can't. My feels been messed up. That was just such a touching reunion. And, yeah, like I know some people screaming for a reboot. I think they said or will confirm that there's a reboot that's going to be more of a drama or something. I could be wrong about that. I know there was a fan-made trailer for The Fresh Prince with a grittier feel to it, and Will Smith loved it. But I think it has been confirmed that they're actually doing an official reboot. I just have not been following it because with 2020 and the pandemic, with so many ideas being flung out there, but then, due to somebody catching the Rona or whatnot, the production stopped. I just stopped paying attention. But I did love when they talked about, the fashion they would pick to wear. And when you think about it, and this is something that I really wish, more people would talk about. Not a lot of shows today do what they did back in like the 90s, early 2000s, where there would be just a large array of musical artists, big time names that would appear in certain episodes, like Johnny Gill on 101, Johnny Gill on Family Matters. Look, I know it's controversial, but I mean, Donald Trump showed up towards the end of The Fresh Prince when they were trying to sell the house. You had, Don Cheadle, they had that. Then, I think they had a clip of Vivica Fox. I think there was like a little montage of Will breaking the fourth wall, by looking at the audience and whatnot. And of course, the classic gags like, well, if we're so rich, how come we can't afford a ceiling? And I mean, it's just Queen Latifah and, Jasmine Guy, she was in an episode. And Malcolm Jamal Warner. Like, wasn't there that one episode where Will was dreaming and like all these black, actors and celebrities popped up in the living room? It was like Dwayne from a Different World. It was just like a huge crossover. I think there was like a basketball player too. those were moments that I loved as a child, because it was just cool to see, like, when a show reached a certain level of popularity, it was the show to pop up on. Like, I watched this YouTuber do like a little documentary about the Proud Family, and he talked about how the Proud Family got so popular. Like, so many big names were calling the creators to have a, like a voice, character to voice act for. Like, I think Mariah Carey was in one, Alicia Keys, and the list goes on. So the Fresh Prince, definitely something that's going to last for generations. I loved it. I still do. I think we all have our favorite moments, favorite episodes, whether it be holiday, whether they be tackling serious issues, whether they be, the comedic aspects from the Carlton dance to Will and Jazzy Jeff's, handshake, that kind of stuff. But this was a great reunion. I know some people are like, I don't have HBO Max. Look, I want to be real here. It's probably available online for free, various other places, because people have been streaming this sucker left and right. So you can probably find it somewhere. But if you can't, at least sign up for HBO Max, even if it's just during a free trial period, because you're not going to regret watching the reunion. It was great. So let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. What did you think of the reunion? What were some of your favorite parts? Were there certain things you wish were in the reunion that weren't? But I really love like how they touched upon like the first scene, or excuse me, the first ending of the first episode where Will's playing the piano and Uncle Phil's watching him, and then the last scene where Will cuts out the light, and then the reunion opens up with him flipping the switch and everybody comes on. And even Alfonso coming down the stairs, a nod to the ending of the final episode where after Will cuts off the light, Carlton runs down from the bathroom. So I thought that was pretty funny. But once again, this was great. You know what? I might even watch it again later today. Damn it, I probably will. So thanks so much for tuning in, guys. If you'd like to donate to the channel, feel free to do so on PayPal or Cash App, or join my Patreon for as little as $1 a month. Like I said before, please subscribe, like the video, and turn on that notification bell. And with that being said, I'll talk to you soon.